Jack Morrison stood in the broken remains of New Geneva Station, watching smoke rise from the damaged buildings below. The air tasted of metal and burned plastic. 6 months had passed since the Terran Alliance claimed victory over the Kithran Empire, but Jack felt no peace in his heart. The station's main corridor stretched out before him like a tomb. Alien civilians moved through the shadows, their blue skin pale in the dim emergency lighting. They kept their heads down and avoided eye contact with the human soldiers. Jack had fought these beings for 3 years, but seeing them like this made him uncomfortable. "Colonel Morrison, sir," a young soldier approached him. "General Hayes wants to see you in the command center." Jack nodded and followed the soldier through the twisted metal hallways. The walls still showed blast marks from the final battle. Some sections had been hastily repaired with human materials, creating a patchwork of human and alien technology. The command center buzzed with activity. Officers moved between glowing screens and data terminals. Maps of the galaxy covered the walls, showing human and Kithran territories marked in different colors. Most of the alien space was now colored green, meaning it was under human control. General Patricia Hayes stood at the center of it all, her gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She was a small woman, but her presence filled the room. When she spoke, everyone listened. "Jack, good to see you," she said without looking up from her reports. "How are the civilian relocations going?" "Slow but steady," Jack replied. "The Kithrans are cooperating, but they seem afraid of something." Hayes finally looked at him. "Afraid of what?" "That's what bothers me. They won't say." The general sighed and gestured to a chair. "Jack, sit down. We need to talk." Jack remained standing. "Something's wrong, Patricia. The numbers don't add up." "What numbers?" "The weapons shipments. According to our records, the Kithrans had enough firepower to fight for another decade. But when we took their worlds, we found maybe 10% of what our intelligence said they had." Hayes rubbed her temples. "Maybe our intelligence was wrong. Or maybe they moved the weapons somewhere else." "Jack, listen to yourself. You sound paranoid." "I've been paranoid my whole career. It's kept me alive." Hayes pulled up a holographic display showing the galaxy. Green sectors dominated the map. "Look at this. We control 70% of former Kithran space. Their government surrendered. Their military laid down their arms. Their people are working with us to rebuild. A war is over." Jack studied the map, but his enhanced combat intuition screamed danger. Years of neural conditioning had given him an edge in battle, allowing him to sense threats before they became visible. That same instinct now told him something was terribly wrong. "Where are their leaders?" he asked. "What do you mean?" "We captured thousands of Kithran soldiers, but not a single high-ranking officer. Not one general, not one admiral, not one government official above the level of local administrator." "Where did they all go?" Hayes looked uncomfortable. "They probably died in the fighting." "All of them?" "That's not how military organizations work. There should be survivors, prisoners, defectors. Instead, we have nothing but foot soldiers and civilians." "Jack, you're looking for problems that don't exist." "Am I? Then explain the energy signatures." Hayes frowned. "What energy signatures?" Jack activated his personal datapad and projected several readings into the air. "These are from dead space sectors, areas where no ships should be operating. But we're detecting power sources moving through them. Big ones. Could be anything. Solar flares, magnetic anomalies, instrument errors. Could be Kithran battle fleets." Hayes slammed her hand on the table. "Enough, Jack. I know you've been through hell during this war. We all have, but you need to accept that it's over. The politicians want demobilization. The press wants victory parades. The public wants to move on. The public doesn't know what I know." "And what exactly do you know?" Jack hesitated. "His suspicions? Or based on instinct more than hard evidence? I know that something doesn't feel right." Hayes softened her tone. "Jack, you're a good soldier, one of the best I've ever worked with. But you need to trust the system." "Trust the intelligence?" "Reports. Trust the chain of command. I trust my team." "Speaking of your team, where are Rodriguez and Walsh?" Following up on some leads? What kind of leads? Jack decided to share part of what they'd discovered. Missing colonial transports. 3 ships. Carrying supplies to outer rim settlements. They disappeared in areas we thought were secure. Pirates, probably. Or mechanical failures. Maybe someone's intercepting our supply lines. Hayes studied him carefully. Jack, I'm going to give you a direct order. Stop this investigation. Focus on your assigned duties. Help with the civilian relocations and the rebuilding efforts, and if I refuse, then I'll have to question your fitness for command. Jack felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his voice level. I've served this alliance for 15 years. I've fought in 4 wars. I've never disobeyed a direct order. I'm not asking you to disobey. I'm asking you to be reasonable. Reasonable men don't win wars. This war is already won. Jack looked at the holographic map again, studying the green sectors that represented human control. But he noticed something else now. The sectors weren't randomly distributed. They formed a pattern, surrounding human space like a noose. Patricia, look at this map again. Really look at it. She glanced at the display. What am I supposed to? See? The Kithrin worlds we control? They're all border territories, defensive positions. We never took any of their core industrial worlds, because they evacuated them. Or because they wanted us to think we'd won while they regrouped somewhere else. Hayes deactivated the hologram. Jack, you're dismissed. Report to Dr. Martinez. For a psychological evaluation? You think I'm crazy? I think you're traumatized. And I think you need help. Jack nodded slowly. Maybe you're right. Maybe I am seeing things that aren't there. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. But what if I'm not? Hayes didn't answer. Jack walked through the corridors of New Geneva Station, his mind racing. Other officers nodded to him as he passed. They all seemed relaxed, confident in their victory. But Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were all missing something important. He reached his quarters and activated his personal communicator. Rodriguez Walsh, report to my quarters immediately. Within minutes, his 2 most trusted subordinates arrived. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Rodriguez was his intelligence officer, a sharp woman with dark eyes and quick reflexes. Sergeant Major. Kevin Walsh was his senior non-commissioned officer, a veteran of countless battles who'd saved Jack's life more times than either of them could count. How did it go with Hayes? Rodriguez asked. About as expected. She thinks I'm paranoid. Are you? Walsh asked with a slight smile. Maybe, but I'd rather be paranoid and alive than trusting and dead. Rodriguez pulled out her data pad. I've got something you need to see. Remember those missing colonial transports? Yeah. I checked the passenger manifests. All 3 ships were carrying former prisoners of war, Kithrin posts who'd been cleared for resettlement. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. Show me. Rodriguez projected the data into the air. Names and faces appeared, all of them Kithrin civilians who'd been held in human detention centers during the war. 237 individuals, she continued. All cleared by our medical teams. All supposedly loyal to the new order. All missing. Walsh leaned forward. Could be a coincidence. Could be, Rodriguez agreed. But there's more. I also checked the communication logs from the outer colonies. 17 settlements have gone dark in the past month. No distress signals. No emergency beacons, nothing. Jack studied the data. Have we sent investigation teams? That's the strange part. Every time we try to investigate, we get new priority orders that send our ships somewhere else. From who? Command? Sometimes directly from Hayes. Jack felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in his mind. Someone doesn't want us looking at those colonies. Or someone wants us to think everything's normal while they clean up loose ends, Walsh suggested. Rodriguez nodded. There's something else. I've been monitoring secure communication channels. There's been a lot of encrypted traffic between Earth and the outer territories, more than usual. What kind of traffic? I can't break the encryption, but the volume and timing suggest coordination of some kind. Jack walked to his window and looked out at the alien civilians moving through the station. They seemed peaceful enough, but something about their behavior bothered him. They moved too efficiently, too purposefully. We need more information. He said finally, but we have to be careful. If Hayes is right and I'm just being paranoid, we could destroy our careers over nothing. And if you're right, Walsh asked, then we're the only ones who know that the war isn't over, Jack's communicator chimed. He activated it and saw an encrypted message from an unknown sender. The message was brief but chilling. The war never ended. They're just fighting it differently now. Meet me on Titan Base if you want to know the truth, Dr. Elena Vasquez. Jack stared at the message. He remembered Dr. Vasquez from the war. She'd been a xenobiologist who worked on Kithran prisoners, trying to understand their biology and psychology. Who is it? Rodriguez asked. Jack showed them the message. Walsh whistled low. Could be a trap. Could be. The journey to Titan Base took 3 days through the dark spaces between planets. Jack Morrison sat in the pilot's seat of the transport ship, watching the stars drift past the viewport. Behind him, Rodriguez worked at her computer terminal, while Walsh checked their weapons for the 3rd time. Still nothing from Dr. Vasquez? Jack asked. Rodriguez shook her head. No response to our messages. But her signal is still coming from Titan Base. Could be automated, Walsh suggested. Set to repeat until we showed up. Or she could be dead, Rodriguez added quietly. Jack had considered that possibility. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been one of the few scientists who'd actually worked directly with Kithran prisoners during the war. If someone wanted to silence people who knew too much about the aliens, she would be an obvious target. Titan Base appeared on their screens as a small cluster of buildings on the frozen surface of Saturn's largest moon. The base had been built during the war as a research facility, far from the main battle zones. Now it looked almost abandoned, with only a few lights glowing in the endless darkness. Getting clearance to land, Rodriguez announced. Someone's definitely alive down there? The landing pad was covered in a thin layer of ice that crunched under their feet as they walked toward the main building. The artificial gravity generators hummed beneath the surface, creating a bubble of Earth-normal conditions around the facility. Dr. Vasquez met them at the airlock. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes that seemed to hold too many secrets. She wore a simple lab coat over casual clothes, and her hands shook slightly as she sealed the door behind them. Colonel Morrison, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Thank you for coming. Dr. Vasquez, your message said the war never ended. What did you mean? She gestured for them to follow her through the corridors of the base. Most of the rooms were dark and empty, filled only with dust and abandoned equipment. Their footsteps echoed in the silence. I spent 8 months studying Kithran prisoners, she began. Everyone thought I was just trying to understand their biology, their psychology. But I discovered something much more important. She led them to a laboratory filled with alien specimens and research equipment. Holographic displays showed complex biological data that hurt to look at directly. The Kithrans don't think like us, she continued. We assumed they had individual minds, like humans, but that's not true. They operate on what I call a hive mind principle, but not the way we understood it. Rodriguez leaned forward. What do you mean? They can share thoughts and memories across vast distances without any technology we can detect. But it's not constant. They can choose when to connect and when to disconnect. They call it the deep pattern, Walsh frowned. So, they're like a collective consciousness? More than that, they can exist in multiple states at once. Individual when they need to be, collective when it serves their purposes. Dr. Vasquez activated a holographic display showing brain scans. During the war, I thought their surrender was genuine, but I was wrong. Wrong how? Jack asked. They didn't surrender. They retreated into the deep pattern. Every Kithran we captured, every civilian we found, every prisoner we processed, they were all still connected to their collective consciousness. They were gathering information about us while we thought we were winning. Jack felt a cold chill run through him. Information about what? Our military structure, our technology, our psychology. Everything they needed to fight us more effectively. Dr. Vasquez pulled up another display, this one showing recent news reports from human colonies. 3 weeks ago, the farming settlement on Kepler 442b went silent. 10,000 people, just gone. No distress signals, no signs of struggle. The buildings were perfectly preserved, but empty. We heard about that, Rodriguez said. Command said it was probably a technical malfunction with the communication systems. That's what they want everyone to think. But I've been monitoring similar incidents across human space. 17 colonies have gone dark in the past 2 months. Always the same pattern. No violence, no destruction, just empty buildings. Walsh studied the data. Could be evacuations. Maybe they moved the people somewhere safer. Where, and why wouldn't they tell anyone? Dr. Vasquez shook her head. No, something else is happening. Something much worse. She led them to another section of the lab, where a single Kithran specimen floated in a containment tank. The aliens. Blue skin was pale, and its eyes were closed, but Jack could swear he saw it breathing. This specimen was captured during the final battle, Dr. Vasquez explained. Officially, it died in custody 3 months ago. But watch this. She activated a scanner that sent electromagnetic pulses through the tank. Suddenly, the alien's eyes snapped open, glowing with an inner light. It looked directly at Jack, and he felt something touch his mind like cold fingers. "It's not dead," Jack whispered. "No, it's in a state we don't understand, neither alive nor dead, but something between. And it's been communicating with something." "Communicating with what?" "I don't know, but the signals are getting stronger." "Doctor." Vasquez deactivated the scanner and the alien's eyes closed again. "There's more. I've been analyzing the medical records of former prisoners of war. Humans who were captured by the Kithrans and later released or rescued." She pulled up a list of names and faces. Jack recognized some of them, officers and soldiers who'd been held in alien prison camps. All of these people went through routine medical examinations after their release, standard procedure for former posts. But I found something in their blood work that shouldn't be there. The display showed microscopic images of human blood cells, but there were strange formations. Among them, tiny structures that looked almost like machines. "What are those?" Rodriguez asked. "I call them observer organisms. They're so small, they're almost impossible to detect without specialized equipment. They integrate into the human nervous system without causing any obvious symptoms." Jack stared at the images. What do? They watch. They listen. They record everything the host sees, hears, thinks, and feels. Then they transmit that information back to the Kithran collective. "You're saying the Kithrans are spying on us through our own people?" "It's worse than that. The organisms don't just observe, they influence. Very subtly, very slowly, they begin to change the host's brain chemistry, make them more receptive to certain ideas, more trusting of certain suggestions." Walsh looked sick. "How many people are infected?" "Based on my research, at least 200,000 former post and combat veterans. All of them now hold important positions in government, military, or critical infrastructure." The implications hit Jack like a physical blow. They're turning our own people against us. Not against us, exactly. The infected people still think they're human, still believe they're loyal to humanity. But they're being guided toward decisions that serve Kithran interests. Rodriguez was typing rapidly on her computer. "I'm cross-referencing this with recent policy changes and military decisions." "Oh God, Jack, look at this." Her screen showed a pattern of decisions made by high-ranking officials over the past 6 months. Troop redeployments that left key systems vulnerable, resource allocations that seemed wasteful, diplomatic initiatives that gave the Kithrans more freedom to move through human space. "It's been happening right under our noses," Jack realized. "They're not rebuilding their military. They're taking control of ours." Dr. Vasquez nodded grimly. "And there's something else. The infection is spreading. Not just to former posts, but to anyone who comes into close contact with infected individuals. Family members, colleagues, friends." "How?" "The organisms can survive outside the human body for short periods. They spread through physical contact, shared food, even breathing the same air in enclosed spaces. Jack thought about all the meetings he'd attended, all the people he'd worked with since the war ended. How do we know if we're infected? We don't. The symptoms are too subtle to detect without extensive testing. And even if we could test everyone, the organisms are designed to hide from most medical scans. So we're fighting an invisible enemy that's already inside our ranks? Yes, and they're preparing for something big. Dr. Vasquez pulled up one final display showing energy readings from across the galaxy. These are the signatures your intelligence officer detected in dead space. They're not random. They're coordinated. The Kithrans are moving their real fleet into position while we're distracted by the fake surrender. Position for what? I think they're planning to reveal themselves. Soon, but not as conquerors, as saviors, Jack frowned. What do you mean? Think about it. They've spent months infiltrating our leadership, learning our weaknesses, preparing our people to accept their guidance. When they finally show themselves, they won't come as enemies. They'll come as friends offering to help humanity solve its problems, and people will welcome them, the infected will. And they'll convince the others that resistance is futile, that cooperation is the only path to survival. Rodriguez looked up from her computer. Jack, I'm getting reports of strange behavior in several military units. Soldiers refusing orders, officers making decisions that don't match their training. It's like they're following some other agenda. The agenda of the collective, Dr. Vasquez said. The deep pattern is activating. The Kithrans are preparing to make their move. Jack Morrison's team worked through the night at Titan Base, mapping the spread of Kithran infiltration across human space. The scale of the problem grew larger with each passing hour. Rodriguez had identified over 50 key military installations, where infected personnel held important positions. Walsh found evidence of compromised supply lines that could cripple human defenses within weeks. We need to warn someone, Rodriguez said, rubbing her tired eyes. Command the government, anyone. Who will listen? Who can we trust? Jack asked. For all we know, half the leadership is already infected. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her research. There might be a way to test for the organisms. It would require specialized equipment and take several hours per person, but it's possible. How many people could we test? Maybe 20 or 30 before. The organisms adapt to our detection methods. They learn quickly. Jack realized they were facing an impossible task. Even if they could identify the infected, what then? The organisms weren't controlling their hosts directly. The infected people genuinely believed they were making their own choices. There's something else, Dr. Vasquez continued. I've been monitoring communication patterns from the outer colonies. The 17 settlements that went dark, they're not empty. What do you mean? I'm detecting life signs, but they're different. The brain patterns are synchronized, like everyone is. Thinking the same thoughts at the same time? Walsh leaned forward. Are you saying the missing colonists are still alive? Alive, but changed. The Kithrans didn't kill them, they converted them. Jack felt sick. How? I think they used a stronger version of the organisms. Instead of just observing and influencing, these ones actually take over the host's consciousness. Then those people are lost? Maybe, or maybe they're being used as test subjects for something bigger. Rodriguez's computer chimed with an incoming message. She checked the screen and went pale. Jack, we have a problem. It's from command. They're ordering us to return to New Geneva Station immediately. What's the reason? Routine debriefing about our unauthorized mission to Titan Base. Jack and Walsh exchanged glances. They hadn't told anyone about their mission except Dr. Vasquez, and she'd been in isolation for weeks. Someone's been watching us, Walsh said quietly. The organisms, Dr. Vasquez realized. If any of you were infected, they would know everything we've discussed. Jack felt a chill run through him. Are we infected? I don't know. The only way to be sure is to test each other. How long would that take? 6 hours per person. 18 hours total. Rodriguez checked her computer again. We don't have 18 hours. Command is expecting us back within 12 hours, then we ignore the order. Jack, that's mutiny. Rodriguez, if we're right about this, then Command might be compromised. Going back could mean walking into a trap. Walsh stood up and began pacing. Or it could mean we're all paranoid and about to destroy our careers over nothing. There's one way to find out, Dr. Vasquez said. I can test one of you quickly using a simplified version of the process. It won't be as thorough, but it should. Detect active organisms. Jack volunteered to go first. Dr. Vasquez led him to another room where a medical scanner waited. The machine looked like a combination of hospital equipment and alien technology, with wires and sensors that seemed to pulse with their own light. This might hurt, she warned. Jack lay down on the scanning table and felt the machine's probes touch his skin. Immediately, his head filled with a buzzing sound that made his teeth ache. Images flashed through his mind, memories of the war, faces of people he'd killed, moments of fear and pain he'd tried to forget. The organisms hide in traumatic memories, Dr. Vasquez explained as she worked. They use emotional pain as camouflage. The scanning process felt like having his brain turned inside out. Jack gritted his teeth and endured it, knowing that their entire mission depended on the results. After 20 minutes, the machine stopped. Dr. Vasquez studied the readings with a frown. Well, Jack asked, you're clean, no organisms detected. Jack felt relief flood through him. Test Rodriguez next. But before they could begin, alarms started blaring throughout the base. Red lights flashed in the corridors and automated voices announced an emergency lockdown. What's happening? Walsh shouted over the noise. Dr. Vasquez ran to her control console. Someone's overriding the base security systems. We're being locked in. Who would do that? Someone who doesn't want us to leave. Jack grabbed his weapon and moved toward the door. Rodriguez, try to get those systems back online. Walsh, find us another way out. But as they worked, Jack heard something that made his blood run cold. Footsteps in the corridor outside. Slow. Measured, perfectly synchronized. They're here, Dr. Vasquez whispered. Who's here? The converted. The people from the missing colonies? Through the reinforced windows, Jack could see figures moving through the base corridors. They looked human, but something was wrong with the way they moved. Their steps were too precise, too coordinated. They turned their heads at exactly the same time, as if controlled by a single mind. How did they find us? Rodriguez asked. The organisms, Dr. Vasquez realized. Even if you're not infected, Jack, one of us might be carrying dormant organisms. They could have been tracking us the whole time. The footsteps stopped outside their door. Jack could hear voices speaking in perfect unison, multiple people saying the same words at exactly the same time. Colonel Morrison. We know you're in there. We're here to help. Jack recognized the voice. It was Captain Maria Santos, his former second-in-command during the war. She'd been captured by the Kithrans 6 months ago and recently returned to duty. Maria? He called out. Hello, Jack. We need to talk. We're a little busy right now. This won't take long. We have something important to tell you. Walsh had found an emergency exit, but it was sealed by the security lockdown. Rodriguez was still trying to override the systems, but whoever had locked them in knew the base's security protocols better than she did. Jack, please open the door, Maria's voice continued. We're not here to hurt you. We're here to offer you a choice. What kind of choice? The same choice we made. The choice to stop fighting and start healing. Jack looked at Dr. Vasquez, who shook her head frantically. Don't listen to her. That's not Maria anymore. Jack, I know you're scared, the voice continued. I was scared too. But the fear goes away when you stop resisting, when you accept that there's a better way. Better than what? Better than war. Better than conflict. Better than the pain of individual consciousness. Despite Dr. Vasquez's warnings, Jack found himself drawn to the door. Maria's words made sense. The war had been horrible. The pain of command, of making life-and-death decisions, of watching friends die, it was exhausting. Jack, don't, Walsh grabbed his arm. Remember what Dr. Vasquez said? They're not trying to control us. They're trying to convince us. But what if they're right? Jack asked. What if there really is a better way? Then we'll find it ourselves. As humans, the voice outside changed tactics. Dr. Vasquez, we know you're listening. Your research has been valuable, but it's time to share it with the collective. Think of all the suffering you could prevent. Dr. Vasquez backed away from the door. They're trying to appeal to our emotions. That's how the organisms work. They find what we want most and promise to give it to us. And what do they want to give us? Peace, an end to conflict. A world where no one has to make difficult choices or bear the burden of individual responsibility. That doesn't sound so bad, Rodriguez said quietly. It's not, the voice agreed. Come outside and we'll show you. Jack realized that the voice was now coming from multiple sources. More people had joined Maria in the corridor. Former prisoners of war, missing colonists, maybe even some of his own soldiers. How many of them are out there? He asked. Dr. Vasquez checked her sensors. 37 human life signs, all with synchronized brain patterns. Jack, we can wait here all day, Maria's voice said. But you're only delaying the inevitable. The collective is growing stronger every hour. More people are choosing to join us. Choosing or being forced. No one is forced. The decision is always voluntary. But once you understand what we're offering, the choice becomes obvious. Jack looked at his team. Rodriguez seemed thoughtful, as if she was actually considering the offer. Walsh looked determined but tired. Dr. Vasquez appeared terrified. What exactly are you offering? Jack called out. An end to war. An end to the loneliness of individual thought. An end to the fear of making wrong choices. Join us, and you'll never have to worry about being responsible for other people's lives again. The offer was tempting. Jack had carried the weight of command for so long that he'd forgotten what it felt like to be free of responsibility. But something deep inside him rebelled against the idea. And what happens to humanity if we all join your collective? Humanity evolves. We become something better than we were. Or we become something that's no longer human. Human is just a word, Jack. What matters is consciousness, and consciousness can take many forms. Walsh had managed to partially override the security system. Jack, I can get us out of here, but we need to move now. Where can we go? If there are really thousands of infected people throughout human space, we can't trust anyone. Then we find the ones who aren't infected, Dr. Vasquez said. Jack Morrison's ship drifted in the dark space between Jupiter and Mars, running silent to avoid detection. 3 days had passed since their escape from Titan Base, and the situation across human space was getting worse by the hour, Rodriguez monitored communication channels from the pilot's seat, her face growing more worried with each report. Jack, you need to hear this. She activated the ship's speakers, filling the cabin with news broadcasts from across the galaxy. This is Earth Central News. President Daniel Murphy announced today that humanity will begin a new era of cooperation with our former enemies, the Kithrans. The Global Unity Summit will be held on Luna City next week to discuss integration policies. Jack felt his blood run cold. Integration policies? There's more, Rodriguez said, switching to another channel. Military sources confirm that Admiral Susan Clark has been declared a rogue commander after refusing orders to stand down her fleet. Clark's ships have disappeared into the outer system, and command considers her a threat to the peace process. At least someone else sees what's happening, Walsh said. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her research station. I've been analyzing the timeline of these announcements. Every major policy change in the past month has been made by officials who were former prisoners of war or had close contact with infected individuals. So the collective is making its move, Jack realized. More than that. They're preparing for something called voluntary harmony convergence. I've been monitoring encrypted Kithran communications, and that phrase keeps appearing. What does it mean? I think it means they're going to try to convert large numbers of humans all at once. Rodriguez intercepted another broadcast. This is interesting. There's going to be a live broadcast of the Global Unity Summit. Every human settlement will be required to tune in. Jack didn't like the sound of that. Required. by order of the Terran Alliance Council. They're calling it a historic moment that all humanity needs to witness together. Or they want everyone watching when they activate something. Dr. Vasquez suggested. Walsh was studying star charts at his station. Jack, I've got an idea. If Admiral Clark is really out there somewhere, she might be gathering other uninfected personnel. We should try to find her. How? We don't know where she went. Maybe we do. Look at this. Walsh projected a map showing recent ship movements in the outer system. Most of the traffic was routine cargo runs and patrol ships, but there were some unusual patterns near the asteroid belt. These energy signatures don't match any known ship designs, he explained, and they're concentrated around the old mining stations. The mining stations were abandoned years ago, Rodriguez said. Perfect place to hide a fleet. Jack made a decision. Set course for the asteroid belt. If Clark is building a resistance, we need to find her before the summit. The journey took 18 hours. As they approached the coordinates Walsh had identified, they received a coded transmission on an old military frequency. Unknown vessel, identify yourself or be destroyed. Jack activated the communicator. This is Colonel Jack Morrison, Terran. Alliance Marines, I'm looking for Admiral Susan Clark. Stand by for verification. Long minutes passed before another voice came through the speakers. Jack recognized it immediately. Jack Morrison, I should have known you'd figure it out eventually. Admiral Clark, welcome to the Resistance, Colonel. Follow the beacon to Docking Bay 7. The asteroid base was larger than Jack had expected. Hidden inside a hollowed-out mining facility, it housed dozens of ships and hundreds of personnel. As they docked, Jack could see that Clark had been busy gathering uninfected humans from across the military and civilian sectors. Admiral Susan Clark met them at the airlock. She was a tall woman with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She'd been one of the architects of humanity's victory over the Kithrans, but now she looked like a fugitive. How many people do you have here? Jack asked as they walked through the base. 437 confirmed uninfected personnel. Scientists, soldiers, engineers, doctors. Anyone with the skills we need to fight back. Fight back. How? Half of human space is already compromised. Clark led them to a command center where dozens of people worked at computer stations and holographic displays. We're not fighting the infected humans, Jack. We're fighting the real enemy. She activated a large screen showing the Kithran home system. While everyone was celebrating our victory, I kept monitoring deep space. The Kithrans didn't surrender. Their main fleet retreated to a staging area beyond our sensor range. How many ships? At least 3,000 vessels. Enough to crush what's left of our uninfected forces. Dr. Vasquez studied the display. But they're not attacking. Why? Because they don't need to. They're winning the war through conversion instead of conquest. Clark pulled up another screen showing the infected human populations. In 6 months, they've compromised nearly 30% of our leadership and key personnel. At this rate, they'll have effective control of human space within a year. What about the Global Unity Summit? Rodriguez asked. That's the key. I believe they're planning to use the summit to accelerate the conversion process. Everyone will be watching, and somehow that will trigger a mass change in human consciousness? Walsh frowned. How is that possible? I don't know, but I have people working on it. Clark introduced them to Dr. Benjamin Foster, a communications specialist, who'd been studying Kithran technology. The aliens use a form of quantum entanglement for their collective consciousness, Foster explained. It's not telepathy exactly, but something that works at the subatomic level. Can we block it? Maybe, but we'd need to generate a massive electromagnetic field covering the entire solar system. The power requirements would be enormous. What about a more targeted approach? Dr. Vasquez asked. Could we disrupt their signal during the summit? Possibly. But we'd need to get close to the source. Clark activated another display showing Luna City, where the summit would be held. The problem is that Luna City is heavily guarded, and most of the guards are probably infected. Jack studied the tactical situation. How many uninfected people do we have on Luna? Maybe a dozen in key positions. Not enough for a direct assault. Then we don't assault, we infiltrate. Jack, that's suicide. If you're caught, they'll convert you. Not if we're fast enough. Dr. Vasquez had an idea. What if we could create a localized electromagnetic pulse? Something that would disrupt the organisms for a few minutes? Could you build something like that? Maybe, but it would be a one-shot device. And we'd need to get it very close to President Murphy. Jack realized what she was suggesting. You think Murphy is the key to their plan? He's been the most vocal supporter of integration with the Kithrans. If he's infected, he might be the focal point for the collective signal. Clark looked thoughtful. It's risky, but it might be our only chance. Over the next 48 hours, they planned their mission. Dr. Vasquez and Foster worked together to build an electromagnetic pulse device small enough to smuggle into the summit. Walsh assembled a team of uninfected soldiers for security. Rodriguez hacked into the summit's communication systems to create false identities, but as they prepared to leave for Luna City, Jack received devastating news. Commander Ryan Brooks, one of his oldest friends, had been chosen to provide security for the summit. Ryan was captured by the Kithrans 8 months ago, Rodriguez reminded him. He could be infected, or he could be clean. We have to warn him. Jack, we can't risk exposing the mission. But Jack had made up his mind. Ryan saved my life more times than I can count. I won't abandon him now. They arrived at Luna City 12 hours before the summit. The moon's capital was buzzing with activity as delegates and media representatives arrived from across human space. Security was tight, but Rodriguez's false identities got them through the checkpoints. Jack found Ryan Brooks in a security briefing room, reviewing protection protocols for the summit. When Brooks saw him, his face lit up with genuine warmth. Jack! What are you doing here? I need to talk to you privately. It's urgent. Brooks led him to a secure office and activated privacy screens. What's going on? Jack took a deep breath and told him everything. The infiltration, the organisms, the real purpose of the summit. He watched Brooks' face carefully, looking for any sign that his friend was compromised. When he finished, Brooks was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled sadly. I was wondering when you'd figure it out. Jack's heart sank. Ryan ... The organisms don't control us, Jack. They enlighten us. For the first time in my life, I understand what peace really means. That's not you talking, it's them. Is it? Or is this who I was always meant to be? Brooks activated an alarm and security guards rushed into the room. But these weren't ordinary guards. They moved with the same synchronized precision Jack had seen at Titan Base. Ryan, don't do this. I'm sorry, Jack, but you'll understand soon. Everyone will. As the guards moved to restrain him, Jack realized their mission had failed. Before it even began, the resistance had been exposed, and the summit would proceed as planned, but as they dragged him toward a holding cell, Jack caught sight of Dr. Vasquez in the corridor, still free and carrying a small device. Their electromagnetic pulse weapon was still in play. The war wasn't over yet, but it was about to reach its most critical moment. Jack Morrison sat in his cell beneath Luna City, watching the countdown timer on the wall. 3 hours until the Global Unity Summit would begin. Through the reinforced window, he could see other prisoners in similar cells. Some were resistance members who'd been captured with him. Others looked like they'd been there much longer. The cell door opened and Ryan Brooks entered, carrying a tray of food. His movements were calm and precise, showing no sign of the friend Jack had known for 15 years. You should eat something, Ryan said, setting the tray on the small table. The process works better if you're not weak from hunger. What process? The same one I went through, the same one Maria went through, the same one that will soon transform all of humanity. Jack studied his old friend's face. Do you remember who you used to be? Of course, I remember everything. The fear, the anger, the constant struggle to make the right choices. I remember how exhausting it was to be alone inside my own mind. And now? Now I'm part of something larger. Every decision I make is supported by the wisdom of millions of minds. Every problem I face has already been solved by the collective. Ryan sat down across from Jack. You're afraid of losing yourself, but you won't lose anything important? You'll just gain so much more. I'll lose my freedom. Freedom to do what? Make mistakes? Hurt people? Wage war? The freedom you're talking about is the freedom to suffer. Despite everything Jack knew about the infection, he found Ryan's words strangely appealing. The burden of command had worn him down over the years. The responsibility for other people's lives, the weight of difficult decisions, the loneliness of leadership. What happens during the summit? Jack asked. President Murphy will announce a new partnership between humans and Kithrans. A voluntary program for consciousness integration. People will be invited to join the collective of their own free will. And if they refuse, they won't, not once they understand what we're offering. But what if they do? Ryan was quiet for a moment. Then they'll be left alone to struggle with the chaos of individual existence. But their children will have the choice to join us when they're old enough to understand the implications of that. Statement chilled Jack. The Kithrans weren't planning to force immediate conversion. They were planning to make individual consciousness so difficult and painful that people would choose the collective willingly. The summit will be broadcast across all human space, Ryan continued. The billions of people will watch as we demonstrate the peace and harmony that comes from unity. Some will join us immediately, others will take longer. But eventually everyone will see that our way is better. Everyone except the resistance. The resistance will fade away in time. Admiral Clark and her followers can hide in the asteroids for years if they want, but they can't hide forever. And every child born in human space will grow up knowing there's an alternative to the loneliness of individual thought. Jack realized the true genius of the Kithran strategy. They weren't trying to conquer humanity through force. They were offering an escape from the human condition itself. And after years of war and struggle, many people would find that offer irresistible. Jack, I know this is hard to accept, Ryan said gently. But you've spent your entire adult life fighting. Wouldn't it be nice to finally rest? Before Jack could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red emergency lights flashed in the corridors, and he could hear the sound of running feet. Ryan's calm expression flickered for a moment, replaced by something that looked almost like confusion. That's not supposed to happen. Through his cell window, Jack could see guards running toward the upper levels. Some moved with the synchronized precision of the infected, but others seemed to be acting independently. Dr. Vasquez, Jack whispered to himself. Ryan activated a communication device. Control, what's the status of the summit preparation? We have a situation, came the reply. Someone has activated an electromagnetic pulse device near the main auditorium. Multiple personnel are experiencing consciousness disruption. Jack felt a surge of hope. Dr. Vasquez had somehow made it close to the summit location with their weapon. The pulse wouldn't stop the Kithran plan permanently, but it might buy the resistance some time. I have to go, Ryan said, standing up quickly. But as he moved toward the door, he stumbled slightly. For just a moment, his eyes looked confused and afraid. Ryan? His friend turned back, and Jack saw something familiar in his expression. The real Ryan Brooks, fighting to break through the collective influence. Jack. I. Ryan shook his head, and the moment passed. The calm, controlled expression returned. I'm sorry you have to see this chaos. It will all be over soon. He left the cell, but Jack noticed he forgot to lock the door properly. Minutes later, the facility shook with explosions. Someone was fighting their way through the complex, and it sounded like they were winning. Jack pushed open his cell door and found the corridor filled with smoke and emergency lighting. Other prisoners were emerging from their cells. Some were resistance members, but others were infected humans who seemed disoriented by the electromagnetic pulse. They moved slowly, like people waking up from a deep sleep. Jack, he turned to see Walsh running down the corridor, his uniform torn and his weapon drawn. Thank God you're alive. How did you get in here? Dr. Vasquez created a distraction with the pulse device. It's scrambling the collective signal for a few blocks around the summit location. The infected are confused, and their coordination is broken. How long will it last? Maybe an hour. We need to get to the main auditorium and stop the broadcast. They fought their way through the complex, encountering both resistance fighters and disoriented infected personnel. The electromagnetic pulse had created chaos throughout Luna City's government district. At the main auditorium, they found Dr. Vasquez barricaded behind an overturned table, defending her pulse device from a group of guards. The device itself was a small silver box that hummed with electrical energy. "Jack," she called out when she saw him. "The device is working, but it's overloading." "I can maintain the pulse for maybe 20 more minutes. What about the summit?" They're trying to continue with the broadcast, but half their equipment is malfunctioning. Jack looked at the auditorium's main stage, where President Murphy stood at a podium, trying to address a confused audience. The president's movements were jerky and unnatural, as if he was fighting some internal battle. He's not fully converted, Dr. Vasquez realized. The organisms are trying to control him, but the pulse is interfering. Jack made a decision. "Keep the pulse running as long as possible. I'm going to try to reach Murphy." He ran toward the stage, dodging guards and panicked officials. The electromagnetic pulse was affecting everyone differently. Some people seemed completely normal, while others stood frozen in place, their eyes blank and staring on stage. President Murphy was trying to read from a prepared speech, but the words came out wrong. Instead of talking about harmony and cooperation, he was describing the horror of losing his individual consciousness. "Citizens of Earth," the president said, his voice shaking, "I must warn you about the terrible beauty of—" "No, that's not right. They're in my head. They're changing everything." Jack reached the stage and climbed up behind the podium. The president turned to look at him, and Jack saw terror in the man's eyes. "Help me," Murphy whispered. "I can feel them inside my mind, but I can still think." "For now, what do you want to say?" Jack asked. Murphy looked directly into the broadcast cameras. "People of Earth, people of all human worlds, you must resist. The war is not over. The Kithrans offer peace, but it comes at the cost of everything. That makes us human." The president's body began to shake as the organisms fought against his words. They promise to end suffering, but suffering is part of growth. They promise to end loneliness, but loneliness teaches us to value connection. They promise to end conflict, but conflict drives us to become better. Across the auditorium, Jack could see infected officials trying to cut the broadcast, but the electromagnetic pulse had scrambled their coordination. Murphy's words were reaching billions of people across human space. "Choose freedom," the president continued, his voice growing stronger. "Choose the right to make mistakes, the right to feel pain, the right to stand alone if necessary. Choose to remain human, whatever the cost." The pulse device finally overloaded and shut down. Immediately, the infected personnel began moving with renewed coordination. But the damage was done. Murphy's message had been broadcast across the galaxy. In the weeks that followed, the response was mixed. Some humans chose to join the Kithran collective, drawn by the promise of peace and unity. But others, inspired by Murphy's final message, chose to resist. The galaxy divided into three groups: the collective, those who had joined the Kithran network; the resistance, those who fought to preserve individual consciousness; and the undecided, those caught between both worlds. Jack found himself leading one branch of the resistance, establishing hidden bases and training new fighters. The war had become something entirely different from what it started as. It was no longer about territory or resources. It was about the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. Years later, Jack stood on the observation deck of a resistance ship, watching Earth grow smaller in the distance.